The 38 letters from J.D. Rockefeller to his son are often presented as wisdom, but they also raise some complicated questions. Chris, I'm glad you're here for this one.
I'm glad too, David. This collection is deceptively simple. At first glance, it feels like gentle fatherly advice. But the more you sit with it, the more you realize it's also a blueprint for power, hierarchy, and a very specific moral worldview.
Exactly. These letters are intimate, but they're also ideological. They're not just about how to live well, but how to rule well. And I think that tension is what makes them so fascinating.
Yes, you're reading a father talk to his son, but you're also reading the voice of capital educating its heir.
Let's start there. When you first began reading these letters, did you feel warmth or distance?
Warmth at first. Rockefeller is affectionate, encouraging, even tender. He praises effort, character, discipline. But as I kept reading, I felt a growing distance because the values he's nurturing are very tightly tied to a certain vision of success.
Which is not surprising given who he was. But there's something almost unsettling about how gently power is taught.
Exactly. It's not brutal instruction, it's moralized. He frames wealth as responsibility, leadership as stewardship, hierarchy as natural.
And that's what makes it persuasive, because it doesn't sound like domination. It sounds like care.
Yes. But care for whom and under what terms is the deeper question.
One of the most repeated themes is character. Rockefeller emphasizes honesty, reliability, work ethic. Did that strike you as universal wisdom or situational advice?
Both. Those traits are genuinely valuable. But in this context, they're also tools. Character becomes the moral justification for power. If you are disciplined and ethical, you deserve to lead.
So virtue becomes proof of legitimacy.
Yes. And that's a very powerful idea, especially when inherited wealth is involved.
There's a subtle narrative that runs through the letters. It's that the world is competitive, and only the prepared deserve to win.
Exactly. And preparation here doesn't just mean skill. It means internalizing a worldview where inequality is framed as outcome rather than structure.
That's such an important distinction, because Rockefeller rarely questions the system itself. He focuses on how to thrive within it.
Which makes sense for him. He built that system. But it also limits the scope of his moral imagination.
He often encourages his son to be kind to employees, fair to partners, generous to the poor. On the surface, that sounds humane. But does it actually challenge anything?
Not really. It softens the edges of power without questioning its shape. Charity becomes a way to legitimize accumulation.
That reminds me of something I kept thinking. Is this wisdom about how to be good, or about how to feel good about being powerful?
I think it's mostly the latter. The letters offer a way to hold immense wealth without being consumed by guilt.
Which in itself is a form of emotional management.
Yes, he's teaching his son how to carry power gracefully.
Let's talk about fatherhood. There's genuine affection here. Rockefeller praises his son's efforts, comforts him in failure. Did you feel that love was unconditional?
Emotionally, maybe. Ideologically, no. The love is tied to becoming a certain kind of man. Industrious, controlled, ambitious, moral,
So love has expectations.
always. The son is being shaped as much as supported.
That shaping includes emotional restraint. There's very little room for vulnerability in these letters.
Right. Feelings are acknowledged, but quickly redirected into productivity or self-improvement. Sadness becomes something to overcome, not something to explore.
Which mirrors the capitalist ethic of optimization.
Exactly. Even emotions are managed like assets.
Here's an imaginary scenario. If Rockefeller's son had wanted a simple life, no business, no legacy, just a quiet existence, do you think these letters would have supported that?
I don't think so. The entire framework assumes that greatness is the goal. Modesty might be praised rhetorically, but not as an endpoint.
So humility exists within ambition, not instead of it.
Yes, you're meant to be humble while winning.
One of the most striking aspects of the letters is how calmly they talk about power. There's no anxiety about wealth. It's treated as a natural outcome of merit.
Which is perhaps the most ideological element of all. When wealth is moralized, inequality becomes invisible.
Do you think Rockefeller genuinely believed that, or was it self-serving?
Probably both. People often believe the stories that justify their position. It's psychologically comforting.
Let's talk about work. Rockefeller constantly emphasizes effort, perseverance, discipline. Do you think he underestimates luck?
He acknowledges opportunity, but he frames it as something you earn by being ready. That minimizes structural advantage.
So success is framed as almost entirely internal,
Yes, which can be inspiring, but also misleading.
because it implies failure is also internal.
Exactly. And that can be cruel.
The letters often encourage independence, but within loyalty to the family legacy. How did you read that tension?
As controlled freedom, you're encouraged to think for yourself, but only within boundaries that protect the dynasty.
So autonomy exists, but it's supervised.
Yes, you're free to be yourself as long as yourself fits the inheritance.
That's a heavy psychological inheritance.
It is. The son isn't just inheriting wealth, he's inheriting a worldview.
Do you think that worldview allows for doubt?
Not really. Doubt would threaten the legitimacy of everything that came before.
Which means certainty becomes a form of loyalty.
Yes, to question too deeply would be to destabilize the foundation.
There's something almost religious about that.
Very much so. Capitalism here has a theology. Work is virtue, wealth is blessing, order is moral.
As we move deeper into the letters, what troubled you most?
The absence of the poor as subjects rather than objects. They're spoken about, not with. Their lives exist mainly as moral tests for the rich.
So they're part of the rich man's ethical development.
Yes, not fully realized people with their own agency.
That's such an important critique, because it reveals how empathy can still be hierarchical.
Exactly. You can care deeply and still maintain dominance.
That hierarchy of empathy is something that kept bothering me as well, because it reveals how even kindness can be structured by power. Rockefeller isn't cruel, but he is always positioned above. He gives, he guides, he corrects. Rarely does he listen.
Yes, and that posture extends to how he talks about society. He sees the world as something to be managed. Problems are inefficiencies. People are resources that need to be organized properly.
Which sounds clinical when you say it like that, but in the letters, it's wrapped in warmth and paternal concern.
That's what makes it effective. Power is most stable when it doesn't feel like power.
Let's talk about morality. Rockefeller repeatedly emphasizes doing the right thing, acting ethically, being honest. Do you think his morality is universal, or is it tailored to his position?
It's positional. It's a morality designed for those who already have control. Being honest is easier when you can afford the consequences. Being generous is easier when you have surplus.
So virtue is less risky when you're protected by wealth.
Exactly. That doesn't make the virtue fake, but it does change its meaning.
There's also a strong belief in meritocracy. He constantly encourages his son to earn his place, to work hard, to be worthy. How did you read that, given the inheritance waiting in the background?
That's one of the great contradictions. The son will never truly start from zero, so the language of earning becomes symbolic. It's about deserving, not actually struggling.
So it's moral theater.
In some ways, yes. The performance of merit matters as much as the reality.
That performance helps legitimize the wealth.
Precisely. It says, we didn't just receive this, we deserve it.
Another imaginary situation. If Rockefeller's son had failed repeatedly in business, not because of laziness, but because of bad luck or poor fit, would these letters still affirm his worth?
I think they would try to, but always with an undertone of correction. Failure would be framed as a lesson, not a reason to change direction. The goal would remain success.
So worth is tied to eventual achievement.
Yes, even compassion is oriented toward future productivity.
That feels emotionally narrow.
It is. There's little space for being without doing.
Let's talk about how Rockefeller sees leadership. He encourages firmness, clarity, decisiveness. What kind of leader is he shaping?
A benevolent ruler, someone who knows best, who acts for the good of others, but without questioning their own authority.
That's a very old model.
Yes, it's paternalistic. The leader is the father, the workers are the children.
Which implies that disagreement is immaturity.
Exactly, dissent becomes ingratitude.
Did you notice how rarely collective action appears in the letters?
Yes, solutions are always top-down. The idea that people might organize themselves is almost absent.
Which makes sense, given Rockefeller's history with labor movements.
Very much so. These letters are written from a place of wanting stability, not disruption.
There's also a heavy emphasis on reputation. Rockefeller is very concerned about how his son is perceived. Why do you think that matters so much?
Because reputation is social capital. It allows power to operate smoothly. If people trust you, they're less likely to resist you.
So morality becomes a form of public relations.
In part, yes. Being seen as good protects your position.
That doesn't mean he's insincere.
No, but sincerity and strategy aren't mutually exclusive.
Let's talk about generosity. He encourages his son to give, to be philanthropic. How did that land for you?
It felt sincere, but also limited. Giving is framed as noblesse oblige, not as justice. It's about helping, not restructuring.
So the system remains intact.
Yes, charity becomes a pressure valve.
Another imaginary scenario. If Rockefeller had been born poor, do you think his moral philosophy would look the same?
Almost certainly not. Morality adapts to circumstance. What feels natural when you're powerful often feels very different when you're not.
That's an uncomfortable truth.
It is. But it's essential to understanding these letters.
The tone of the letters is calm, confident, almost serene. Did that ever feel unsettling?
Yes, because it suggests that the world is fundamentally manageable. There's very little recognition of chaos, injustice, or structural suffering,
Everything is framed as a problem to be solved with the right attitude.
which is comforting if you're in control and frustrating if you're not.
How do you think these letters function today in a world more aware of inequality?
They can still offer personal wisdom, but their ideological blind spots are more visible now. We're more likely to question the assumptions beneath the advice.
So the letters require more critical reading than they used to.
Yes, admiration without analysis would miss too much.
What do you think is the most genuinely valuable lesson in the letters?
The emphasis on integrity, on being reliable, thoughtful, consistent. Those values transcend context.
And the most dangerous?
The belief that wealth is proof of virtue.
That belief quietly shapes everything else.
It does. It's the foundation of the worldview.
We're starting to see how these letters are both loving and limiting.
Yes, they offer care, but within a very narrow moral universe.
Before we move into the final stretch, I want to ask you something personal. Did these letters make you reflect on what you've been taught about success?
Very much. They made me realize how many ideas I've inherited without questioning about work, worth, hierarchy, and deserving.
That might be the most valuable outcome of reading them.
I think so. They're mirrors as much as messages.
That idea of these letters as mirrors keeps returning for me too, because even when we critique Rockefeller's worldview, we're also confronting the parts of it that still live inside modern culture. The belief that effort equals worth, that success equals virtue, that hierarchy is natural. Those ideas didn't disappear with his era.
No, they became more subtle. They're woven into how we talk about careers, improvement, and even happiness. These letters are a very concentrated version of a much larger ideology.
which makes them valuable, not just historically, but psychologically.
Yes, they show us how power thinks when it's trying to sound kind.
There's something else I noticed. Rockefeller often encourages his son to be grateful. Gratitude is a recurring theme. How did that land for you?
Gratitude is generally healthy, but here it also functions as a stabilizer. If you're grateful for what you have, you're less likely to question how you got it.
So gratitude becomes a way to quiet doubt.
Exactly. It keeps the moral system intact.
He also emphasizes optimism. He wants his son to see the world as full of opportunity.
Optimism is powerful, but again, it's positional. When you have resources, the future really does look full of possibilities. For others, optimism can feel disconnected from reality.
So even emotions are shaped by circumstance.
Yes, emotional philosophies are never neutral.
If you imagine these letters being written today, in an age of social inequality and global crisis, do you think their tone would be different?
It would have to be. The quiet confidence of these letters rests on a belief in endless growth. That belief is much harder to sustain now.
Which makes these letters feel both timeless and dated.
Exactly. The values persist, but the context has shifted.
Another imaginary situation. If Rockefeller's son had openly questioned the morality of their wealth, had suggested radical redistribution, how do you think the father would have responded?
I think he would have gently redirected him. He wouldn't dismiss him harshly, but he would frame such ideas as naive. The system would be defended as fundamentally sound.
So dissent would be softened rather than engaged.
Yes, it would be absorbed and neutralized.
That's a very effective form of power.
It is. It allows the appearance of openness without risking change.
Despite all of this, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that Rockefeller clearly loved his son. That love feels real.
It does, and that's what makes the letters emotionally compelling. They're not cold instructions. They're warm guidance.
Which makes the ideology harder to see.
Yes, love makes power gentle.
As we come toward the end of this conversation, I want to ask you a big question. Do you think these letters are more about wisdom or more about inheritance?
I think they're about inheritance disguised as wisdom. They teach a worldview that ensures continuity.
That's beautifully said. The continuity of power, values, and identity.
Yes, it's a moral legacy.
If someone today reads these letters looking for guidance, what do you think they should take and what should they leave?
They should take the emphasis on integrity, discipline, and responsibility. They should leave the idea that wealth equals worth and that hierarchy is inherently just.
That's a thoughtful distinction.
It's the only way to honor what's useful without absorbing what's harmful.
Did these letters make you more sympathetic to Rockefeller as a person?
Yes, in some ways, they reveal a man who wants to be good, who wants his son to be good. But they also show the limits of goodness when it's enclosed within privilege.
That feels like a fair reading.
It's a human document, not a neutral one.
As we close, I keep thinking about something. These letters are private, but they've become public wisdom. Do you think that changes their meaning?
Yes, what was once intimate guidance becomes cultural instruction, and that amplifies their ideological weight.
So reading them is not just about learning from a father, but about examining a system.
Exactly. They're artifacts of a worldview.
If you had to summarize the central message of the letters in one idea, what would it be?
That to be worthy of power, you must appear moral, and that morality, in turn, protects power.
That's a sharp insight. I might add that they teach us how deeply personal our economic beliefs really are.
Yes, they live inside families, not just institutions.
Chris, this has been a deeply thoughtful conversation. Thank you for exploring all of this with me.
Thank you, David. These letters deserve to be read slowly and questioned carefully.
And to everyone listening, thanks for giving us your attention. Until next time.